Throughout his life, comedian Norm Macdonald was no stranger to controversy, but after he died, fans were horrified when his fellow comedians revealed his disturbing behavior behind the scenes. Norman Jean Macdonald was born on October 17, 1959 in Quebec City, Canada. His parents, Fern and Percy Macdonald, were both teachers who worked at CFB Valcartier, an army base north of the city. In his early years, his father adamantly refused to let him learn French, potentially due to his Scottish-Irish roots. In his biography, more on that later, Macdonald describes interactions with old Jack, a man who worked for his family during his childhood. In these early entries, he describes going into a shed where Jack lived on the property and the feeling of menace that came over him. "I heard the bolt," he claimed. He also subsequently lacked memories surrounding these years, but revealed in an interview that the memories likely involve horrific events. When old Jack passed, Macdonald had a shocking reaction. Hearing the news of Jack's departure, Macdonald experienced a full-body response. He had loved old Jack, but he still had these buried experiences that caused him to panic. At the funeral, he could barely look into the man's coffin and say goodbye, saying, "I wasn't with him that day, not there in that room." While he never confirmed what happened in the shed and never tried to uncover what his mind had buried, the memories lived on in his body. Macdonald went to Quebec High School until his family relocated to Ottawa. Later in his career, he would claim that he dropped out of high school at 16. But the reality was that he completed his studies early at the age of 14. From there, he made a rather surprising choice considering the direction his life ended up taking. At 16, he got into Carleton University. To add to that rather unexpected choice, Macdonald decided to study math and philosophy. This choice felt wrong for him as he dropped out fairly quickly afterward. He wouldn't return to academics for a while, but when he did, he briefly attended journalism and broadcasting television classes at Algonquin College. He thought he could follow in his older brother's footsteps. Throughout this period of his life, Macdonald had a number of different labor jobs. Most notably, he worked at a logging company as a chokerman, someone who fastens cables to prepare the logs for being transported elsewhere. At the same time, he was preparing for his first foray into comedy. Macdonald's first performance was an amateur night in 1985. He was only 26 at the time, but that didn't stop him from giving it the old college try. Like most comedians starting out, he expected to do a terrible job, but he didn't. He was well received. No one knows why, but the positive reaction almost made Macdonald abandon the art form forever. Luckily, the club owner, Howard Wagman, stepped in. Wagman convinced Macdonald to return to the stage and try again. After that, he was a regular at the amateur performances, and not only that, but his talent was getting some attention. In 1986, Just for Laughs Comedy Festival asked him to perform in Montreal, and he did. The Montreal Gazette called him one of this country's hottest comics. At 29, Macdonald debuted on a US network. He appeared on the Pat Sajak Show. They liked him so much that he guested 5 more times. Macdonald was really on a roll now, and in 1 year, he both competed on Star Search and was a guest on Late Night with David Letterman. Letterman loved Macdonald so much that he said, "We would have had Norm on every week." 1992 was the year of writing gigs for Macdonald. He wrote for The Dennis Miller Show and for the sitcom Roseanne from 1992 to 93. When his time at the sitcom was over, he made a choice that would change his life. He was already doing well as a comedian and a writer, but his next job would cement his name in the minds of the masses. Macdonald became an SNL cast member in 1993, slinging impressions of Larry King, Burt Reynolds, Clint Eastwood, and many others as fast as he could, and it seemed he impressed those who ran the show as they made him the anchor of Weekend Update, a satirical news segment. Macdonald set up some running jokes, some about misconduct in imprisonment scenarios or substance-addicted adult workers, and others about how successful David Hasselhoff was in Germany that he used often during the segment. He also established a gag where he would use a tape recorder saying "Note to self" to add extra jokes to the segment. Macdonald would also use Frank Stallone as a punchline to many of his jokes, leaning on the absurdity for humor. Stallone himself took no insult to these statements, but his brother Sylvester did. In 1997, he guested on SNL and asked Macdonald to stop making jokes about his brother. Fortunately, Macdonald agreed and he stopped. On February 24, 1996, Macdonald poked fun at the fate and actions of a murderer. John Lauder had just been sentenced to die after brutally assaulting a transgender man named Brandon Tina. After the assault, Lauder and his friend sought out Tina and took his life alongside 2 others. First, Macdonald referenced Lauder and his despicable actions. Then he wrongfully identified Brandon Tina and his gender. But this was all blown out of the water by Macdonald's last statement. Now, this might strike some viewers as harsh, but I believe everyone involved in this story should die. Activist groups came after Macdonald and SNL, claiming they never should have aired the joke. Not only that, but activist group The Transsexual Menace alarmed the series by making promises to protest during filming, but NBC looked back at the tapes and were just as shocked as their viewers. They acknowledged they shouldn't have let it air, and they would prevent similar statements from being made. When Michael Jackson and Lisa Marie Presley announced their divorce, Macdonald said the two were never a good match. He had his own complexities that made it difficult. He doubled down when an accident hospitalized Jackson. The musician plastered his room with posters of Shirley Temple, so Macdonald reiterated his previous joking accusation about the singer. Considering his actions on SNL, it took a surprisingly long time for them to part ways, and not for the reasons you'd expect. When Don Ohlmeyer, president of the West Coast NBC division, removed Macdonald from the Weekend Update segment in January 1998, he claimed it was due to a dip in ratings and quality, but Macdonald felt that there was another underlying reason for his firing. He thought that since he'd made some jokes about a very good friend of Ohlmeyer, O.J. Simpson, the network president was punishing him. Ohlmeyer was a big supporter of Simpson during his trial, and Macdonald thought he didn't appreciate the events being made light of, but Ohlmeyer rejected these claims, claiming he hadn't been bothered by another SNL cast member's jokes about the same issues. But Macdonald had enough weight behind his accusations that people started taking sides. After losing his anchor role, Macdonald returned to The Late Show with David Letterman and also appeared on Howard Stern's radio show. Both times, the host took Macdonald's side, agreeing that Ohlmeyer's actions were a result of Macdonald's jokes regarding Simpson's case. It's unclear whether Macdonald's suspicions were correct, but there is enough evidence to at least be wary of how the events played out. Even though he lost his position as anchor, Macdonald stayed on as an SNL cast member for another month, but he couldn't bear being a regular cast member, especially after one bit of dialogue hit a little too close to home. Another character said, "I don't much care for you," and Macdonald's character responded, "A lot of people don't." He was fully let go from the show quickly after that. Macdonald's controversial actions on SNL continued to follow him. When his film Dirty Work was airing ads on NBC, Ohlmeyer refused to screen them. This was a direct result of Macdonald's deprecating comments about SNL and NBC to Letterman and Stern. Macdonald would continue stating that although he liked Ohlmeyer, the NBC president loathed him. There was a hint of irony to Ohlmeyer refusing to air the film's advertisement, though. Apparently the ads sold the film as a revenge comedy, which of course Macdonald saw the humor in. In an interview where the host pointed this out to him, he said, "It would be good revenge if everybody went and saw this movie if they want to get revenge against Don Ohlmeyer for trying to ban my ads." Surprisingly, Jim Downey, formerly an SNL writer and Macdonald's co-writer for his anchor role, shared a different perspective on the story of Macdonald's departure. In a conversation with Macdonald, the comedian claimed SNL was looking to fire Downey. Macdonald told the network that he wouldn't do the segment without his partner and would leave if they got rid of him. Unfortunately, this ultimatum didn't go as planned, and apparently Macdonald went out of solidarity with his friend. In 1999, Macdonald made his own foray into talk shows. He featured in The Norm Show, which co-starred Laurie Metcalf, Artie Lang, and Ian Gomez. The series ran for 3 seasons until 2001, but his screen appearances didn't stop there, nor did he leave his controversial comments in the past. He racked up the credits starting in 2000, adding voice acting to his resume. He appeared in a movie with Dave Chappelle, voiced a character in both Family Guy and The Fairly Odd Parents, and was on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire's Celebrity Edition, where he had a chance to win $1 million. By 2013, he'd made quite the name for himself and was cast in advertisements. In 2013, he started a podcast called Norm Macdonald Live, which also featured his friend Adam Egget. The show streamed live on Video Podcast Network, with episodes later posted to YouTube. Throughout his life, Macdonald struggled with addiction, specifically a gambling addiction. He bet on sports and played poker, and he would stay out until the early hours of the morning. Sometimes his losses would affect his performances and make him a little down. though the quality of his set never suffered. According to Adam Sandler, Macdonald had $25,000 in Atlantic City poker chips stored in his fridge. He discovered this as he searched for something to drink. When he commented on this, Macdonald reportedly stated that this was so he could avoid paying taxes on the amount, but this was untrue. Macdonald then went on to lose all of the money gambling in Atlantic City. Macdonald endured some huge losses thanks to his gambling. There were 3 different instances where he lost a huge amount of money. During the 1989 Super Bowl 23, he bet $400,000 on the underdog and lost it all. According to an interview with Larry King, that was the most he'd ever lost while betting. In a 2018 interview, Macdonald said he was glad the US had cracked down on online poker. He claimed he played around 20 Hold'em games at once, losing more and more money to his problem. Since they went offline, it kind of saved my life, because I was just grinding out and couldn't even sleep. In 2013, Macdonald received a horrifying diagnosis that would gradually erode everything he enjoyed about life. He had multiple myeloma, a cancer affecting white blood cells. He kept this a close secret, only telling his family, his producing partner, and his agent. Neil, his brother, stated that he didn't want his illness to affect the way he was perceived. 2016 brought about the release of his semi-fictional memoir, published by Spiegel and Grau. It was a New York Times bestseller, but the contents of the book faced scrutiny immediately. The rapidly changing tone and struggle to parse the truth from exaggeration confused some readers. Rebecca Onion saw the biography a little differently. She saw it as a reflection of just how poorly Macdonald fit within the industry, the celebrity world at large, and how each story was told was merely a different version of Macdonald that missed out on the greater whole. To her, the book feels like communicating with pure Norm. She didn't reject the existence of his mistakes, merely that he was a nuanced individual who made false steps. In 2017, his comedic stylings took a major shift toward a deadpan technique. With minimal hand gesticulations and minimal movement, he also said he had no opinions and wanted to keep the politics out of his comedy. A year later, he would try and argue for apolitical comedy. During the pandemic, Macdonald's comments about the wider world grew strange. He suffered a similar out-of-touch opinion that many celebrities fell into at the time. Though comments about the newly elected President Trump not making an impact on US politics among other topics, he made an equally astonishing comment about the #MeToo movement taking things too far. Macdonald condemned that it seemed like victims could accuse their assailant and instantly destroy the assailant's lives without due process to prove their claim. On top of that, he expressed sympathy for how Louis C.K.'s life was immediately ruined after people stepped forward with their experiences. In an interview where he defended his opinions, he stated more so that he apologized if his words insulted viewers. While he and cancer battled it out, Macdonald made several comments in interviews that teased his condition. Yes, it was being kept a secret, but he noted to Rolling Stone that there are things that people just don't want to hear or talk about, and one is death. This comment wasn't particularly pointed, but one comment he made during a comedy performance was, "If you die, the cancer also dies at exactly the same time, so that to me is not a loss, that's a draw."
For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factinate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details.
In hospital, alongside going through chemotherapy, Macdonald went through a different sort of treatment. Doctors prescribed stem cell treatment in order to stop cancerous cells from entering his bloodstream, and it worked. Combined with other treatments, his cancer went into remission. Even during treatment, Macdonald had to deal with the fallout. He developed peripheral neuropathy, which meant his nerves were damaged in various locations, and this condition forced him to stop golfing and playing tennis. Once he was in remission, doctors noticed that he had myelodysplastic syndrome, a different type of blood cancer that could become something much worse. Fortunately, the hospital was still there to support him. Macdonald started another bout of chemotherapy, and he expressed that he had hope for his condition by recording a voice acting role for The Orville, a TV series. But complications returned when an infection took hold and jeopardized the whole process. He was also trying desperately to finish up an hour-long live recording of a comedy special. Macdonald filmed his dry run in his living room and hoped to make it to the stage to do a proper take, but he never made it. His manager and professional partner stated that he worked so hard and wanted the material to be seen. Netflix kept news of the recording quiet so they could have a few key figures reveal the project, but Macdonald's strength was waning and no one knew why. And with the pandemic raging, no one knew when he'd finally be able to take the stage. At that point he said, "I'm going to run it once," and did a single take of the special. The special, with his living room as a background, was later released. By July 2021, Macdonald had been living with severe illness for almost a decade. 2 months after contracting an infection during treatments for acute leukemia, the complications from having the illness and enduring the prescribed medical processes were too much. He departed this world on September 14, 2021. His legacy left a huge hole in the lives of his family, friends, and the comedy world, though not only through grief. Many fellow comedians commented on the role Norm Macdonald played in their personal and professional lives. One of these performers was Dave Chappelle, who devoted his live comedy recording The Closer to his friend's memory. Conan O'Brien recalled Macdonald as delivering some of the most brilliant comedy of anyone he knew. Other remembrances of the comedian weren't so positive. Stand-up comic Carrie Lendo stated she didn't have many good memories of Macdonald. Just another story about his mistreatment of women. Another comedian, Jenny Yang, posted additional accusations online. Yang claimed there were many more sinister experiences with Macdonald. She also called other women to respond to her tweet and speak out about their experiences with him. A woman from Milwaukee, Molly, asserted that while taking a picture together, Macdonald touched her inappropriately. Norm Macdonald left behind a complicated legacy, to say the least. He accomplished so much during his life and set himself up as one of the best comedians of his era. But after a couple of fumbles and stumbles in the media, the public eye was souring to him in his final days. Nevertheless, his impact, both in positive and negative ways, will be remembered. If you enjoyed this Fact Nate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want to say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.